All right, we are back with Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney. If you'd like to join us, 737-7587, and I'll make sure to give out, Clint, at the end of the show, contact information for you at your office. But as we wrap things up, I want to talk about, short of actually obviously dying right there on the spot, this to me would be my worst malpractice nightmare. And we've touched on something like this before, but this is patient wide awake during surgery, which I think you're aware of. Under general anesthesia during surgery, they usually receive two types of anesthesia. One, a paralytic to prevent the movement, another, an inhalation anesthesia to prevent pain and loss of consciousness. In this case, this patient underwent surgery. The first agent, the paralytic, worked. The second one, to take away the pain, did not. He underwent massive surgery for 16 minutes before they figured it out. He survived later, had nightmares, couldn't live with it, and killed himself. Because can you imagine having major surgery, you're paralyzed, but you are feeling everything. That is my worst nightmare. That is horrifying.
Yeah, that's on the list of horrors, like being buried alive.
Yes.
I've never had one of those cases. Kind of hope I never do, because I would hate for that to happen to anyone. It does happen. It's a real phenomenon. Anesthesiologists will tell you it's real. There's some difficulties from time to time proving whether the patient actually was conscious, but there are ways that you can prove it. It is much less common now than it used to be. This used to be something that was more common back in the days when anesthesiologists were using different types of ways to knock people out. Now the drugs are so sophisticated that they can be fairly certain it won't happen. But you're right, Nick, that's everybody's nightmare. And this poor guy who killed himself, I suspect he probably had some other conditions, major depression. This might have been the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, well, actually, it says that his family said he never had any psychiatric or psychological conditions until after this, and then he started having panic attacks and suffered insomnia and nightmares, and then a few weeks after the surgery, he committed suicide. They ended up settling confidentially with the hospital on that case, which I would think that's a pretty... The other part of this, Clint, and I know part of your job when you get into this is getting the records and getting evidence of what happened, and I've always asked you, I mean, well, look, you have to ask them for that. How sure are you they're providing everything? In this case, by the way, with this poor guy, when they discovered the mistake they had, they actually ended up giving him something to cause amnesia. So he couldn't remember everything, but he knew something was wrong, and then the truth came out. I mean, how often are hospitals pretty much darn forthcoming with you about the records? Look, I want to see how it went down. I want to see the charts so that you could find out what happened, or do they sometimes, try to hide it?
A fairly significant amount of time, they don't send me everything, or I find records that are simply untrue. That's why I always counsel clients, and I'll tell the people on the show this: if you think you or someone close to you has been seriously harmed or has died as a result of what appears to be a medical mistake, call me. Or call another lawyer who does this. Do not try to handle this on your own, or look in the medical records yourself to see if there's something amiss, because I know how to evaluate records to determine whether they've been monkeyed with, or to determine whether or not there's information that should be in them that's not. That's what I do. I mean, there are Certain clues, Nick, you learn over the course of your career. That's why we call this a practice.
Sure.
But yes, it happens a lot. And I mean, I had a case one time in Chattanooga where the first lawyer who looked at it for the client, who was not board certified in medical malpractice, just looked at it, conferred with one of his friends who was a doctor in town, and said, sorry, there's no claim here. And then she came to me. I looked at it and I immediately saw the records that weren't right. The times were wrong. The entries were not correctly put on the electronic chart. I sent it to my expert, who's seasoned and knows what he's looking for, and there was a case right there.
Yeah.
So you just need to be real careful. If you think you have a claim, go to a lawyer who specializes in this work, because something could get missed. That poor lady, if she hadn't come to me, Nick, she would have never had a claim. And this was a claim where her husband was 42 years old and was the sole breadwinner in the family. And she had no way to feed herself. She had to go back to work, but she had house payments. She had 2 kids to feed. I mean, it was that would have been disastrous if she hadn't come to me and just stuck with that first lawyer's opinion.
Yep, yeah, you have to check it out. And you got to have a gut feeling as the patient yourself, right? So you may not be able to read those records as you look at it. I sure as heck wouldn't try that. But you kind of have an idea, yeah, something's not right here, and that's where you have to call someone like you to look at it and figure it out. I wouldn't know where to start on something like that. By the way, you've told me in the past, I think, that oftentimes when those records aren't as clear as they always can be, sometimes some of the greatest help are the nurses in the room.
Oh, yeah, for sure, because they can fill in the gaps. But what they have learned to do, and I'm talking about they being people particularly in the OR, to protect themselves from malpractice claims, is they just don't report certain things that occurred during the procedure. And they try to leave it up to the plaintiff lawyer like me to discover those things and basically recreate the event so that I can piece together, like a jigsaw puzzle, the facts to make a medical negligence claim. So that's part of the art of what I do, is being able to detect things that are missing that should be in the record and be able then to recreate what occurred so that I can make a judgment, and my medical expert can make a judgment as to whether or not there's a case here.
Clint, you would have made a good investigative reporter. Listen, we got another call for you. Let's go to Debbie. Debbie, good morning. Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
How can we help you? Go ahead.
Well, on the 13th, I had to go by. My doctor ordered, said my B12 was low.
Okay.
And he had me going there to stop by there and get a B12 shot. I was on the way to the Trinova Hospital to have an ultrasound done on my leg. Well, time I got there and time I got that shot, I started getting sick 30 minutes afterwards. And time I got the sign in, they had a wheelchair down, load me up to the emergency room. I was so bad off that I was just out of my head. I asked the girl where my mask was at, and she said it was on my face. Okay, that was something there that was not normal to me. And then I got sick. I was throwing up bile, and they kept me there. My blood pressure went low. My oxygen went low.
Okay, so do you think that
all that happens, that shot?
And you think it was the result of the shot?
Yes, that happened with a shot, and they kept me there for about 5-6 hours in the emergency room because my blood pressure, and my potassium got low too. Well, I went to the doctor after the emergency room. He said there shouldn't be no reason for my potassium to go down.
You think they maybe gave you something by mistake other than B12?
Yes, the girl, see, B12 is the red.
Yeah.
And she gave me, I saw it was purple. It was purple and splashy like in the needle, you know. But I said, I've never seen a nurse so rude to me. She just told me to go in a room. She asked me which arm, and that's all she said to me.
All right, hang on, Debbie. We just have a couple minutes. Clint, should I have her give your office a call?
Sure. I mean, I'd be glad to take a look at it. It sounds like she made a full recovery. I can't tell because I was having a little trouble understanding her because of the communication we have here with Zoom. But she may well have a claim. But this is what you do. You do what Debbie does. You call my office. I've got a special paralegal who does nothing but take these calls. Her name is Michelle, and she gets background information from me, and then she conveys it to me in writing, and I take a look at it. And if I think the claim has legs, if I think there's a case of medical negligence, then I will contact the client, get the client in, or do a Zoom conference like this, explain to them what's going on, and I'll send the case to a medical expert to get a full review. And if that case is viable, then I will go forward with the case until we either get it settled or tried, and the client pays nothing. The entire process is free and confidential. And if I decide not to take the case, again, it's confidential and free, I will write the client a letter explaining the reasons why I don't believe they have a case. So they're not sitting there like a lot of lawyers do, who write clients and say, sorry, I'm not going to take your case, and don't explain why. And the client's, calls me and says, what happened here? When they come to be second or third. So do what Debbie does and make the call.
All right. Yeah. So Debbie, listen, you just saw the number was up on the screen. We'll put that up at again the end of the show. Give that call. It's a really easy number to remember. What is it? 8 million? It's 80008
million. That's right.
You cannot forget about that. And we didn't ask Debbie this, but of course, remember, statute of limitations comes into play. Hopefully it was in the last year. And then, of course, they may have made a mistake, but if you've made a full recovery and there's no damages, then it's usually not a case you can take. I mean, you've seen cases, Clint, before where people have been done wrong, but there was no damage. Thankfully, they were able to recover. You don't have much of a case in that situation, right?
That's correct. Juries don't compensate people when they don't have major permanent injury, in my opinion.
Exactly the case. Clint, listen, thanks so much for joining us today. Really do appreciate it. And look, you'll see you in a month, and take care of yourself. Get back on the golf course, will you?
I will. Take care of yourself.
Right.
Look forward to seeing you again soon.
It's always good talking to you. It's always an education talking to Clint Kelly. Thanks again. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up and stick around. Debbie and others, we'll make sure we put the phone number up there and address for Clint's office there in Hendersonville right after this. Stay with us.